All right, Steeler fans, it is Monday, time for the Monday morning conversation. And I wanted to find an individual that could really kind of put a bow on all the stuff we've talked about over the last, I don't know, 2 months, more than that for some people. And I found him. It's Joe from Draft Nation. He does his podcast here at Fans First Sports Network. And he's also the one that's going to be helping us with the live stream coming up this Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we'll be doing our day one, day two, day three live stream. We're going to be doing it with Draft Nation. But Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, so let's start off with the event in Pittsburgh this year. Before we get into specifics about that, give people a little rundown about Draft Nation and the Draft Nation 412, all that stuff. Tell them about your product and what you guys do on a day-to-day.
Sure. So Draft Nation is a community online for draftniks of all four major sports. So if you go to draftnation.com, you can check it out. We have articles, prospects, and podcasts that focus on NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, and of course the NBA. We're starting to expand into some women's sports and some other sports that have forms of drafts. Like soccer doesn't have a draft, but they've got transfers and things like that too. So as we continue to grow, we'll be covering as many of those things as possible. We've even done some stuff on professional bull riding because they don't only draft the riders, but they draft the bulls, which is kind of interesting as well. But for the most part, the crown jewel in all draft organizations is the NFL. So we cover a lot of that. And this year, especially this time of year, it's all NFL all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's who we are and a little bit of what we do. And folks can find us at draftnation.com.
Okay, so you do a live event. You do this in Pittsburgh, and this is not your first year. So give me a little bit of a genesis story about why you started the live event, how it's grown, and where it's going.
Yeah, so this is our third year of doing it. The first year we paired it with a fundraiser for Jerome Bettis and his foundation. And the goal there was twofold. One, to raise money for the nonprofit, but then also as sort of a coming out party for Draft Nation. At the time, something that was called Draft 412 was our proof of concept. And we wanted to see if we could make something like this work in a sports crazed town like Pittsburgh, and we did. And then over years 2 and 3, we've now expanded it nationally, and we've had efforts stand up in both North and South Carolina and Indianapolis, and we're looking to expand around the country into all 50 or 60 major cities to cover their sports as we continue to grow. But the event that we held a few years ago, we took a little bit of a entrepreneur's gamble. And we rented a large amphitheater next to Heinz Field at the time before it became Acrisure. And we sold it out. We raised a bunch of money for Jerome that night. And we also had, 500 crazy draftniks come there to watch a draft watch party on a big screen and share good food and drink. And it became sort of an indoor tailgate. And then we replicated that in year 2 for Aaron Donald, who had just retired. So his foundation was his new focus. And this year we're doing it for Special Olympics Pennsylvania, focusing on all of Pennsylvania and all Special Olympians, and of course, they're athletes too. And so we want to, ensure that we reach out to that community and bring them in as part of it. So, part of that focus is always going to be philanthropic. The other part of it is a celebration of the return to the NFL season. A lot of folks like us look at that as the NFL Combine, but really most people look at it and say, okay, well, now I know who's coming to my team, and whether it's new free agency or at the draft or the second round free agency, people start paying a little bit more attention around this time of year. So, it's a celebration of that, and everyone comes and has a good time.
So this year, tell people if they live in the Pittsburgh area, if they can still get tickets, where can they get those? Where is it being held? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, so we are holding it at Rivers Casino. And if you're in and around the area, we've had people come in as far as Cincinnati, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Charlotte. We've had a lot of different fans and fan bases show up to come in this year. Ray Mercer, the old boxer, is a Steelers fan. He lives in Carolina. He called us. He says, I want to come up to the party. Ray Boom Boom Mancini is just across the border in Ohio over in Youngstown, and he's a Buffalo Bills fan, and he's coming to the party. So it's not just for Pittsburgh. It just happens to be located here. And because of size, we moved it out of the amphitheater. We're now at Rivers Casino, where we could hold a lot more people. And we're expecting anywhere between 800 to 900 folks at the event. The event technically is sold out, although we do have a few single tickets if you don't mind sitting at tables with strangers. We can work that out, and you can find tickets on draftnation.com, as you mentioned. But the goal there is to really bring people together. We're going to have a band. We're going to have a DJ. We're going to have the silent auction to raise money. We're going to have a couple of these athletes, like former NFL star JT Thomas. He's 4 Super Bowl rings, and Anthony Griggs, who played for the Steelers, the Eagles, the Browns. He's coming into town for it, and we're just going to have a lot of fun. They're going to talk about their draft day stories, and then we're going to comment on the draft as it happens and trades as it happens. And so if you're a fan of that kind of stuff and want to share that experience with your 500 closest friends, this is the place to do it.
Now let's talk about next year, and because, well, it's going to be in Pittsburgh. And first and foremost, before we ask anything detailed to your event and how we're going to be a part of that, I want to ask you, have you heard anything about where the NFL is going to be setting up shop for this in Pittsburgh? Because I've been to Pittsburgh enough times. I cannot conceptually wrap my head around where they're going to fit this many people. It's already being reported that 250,000 to 300,000 people are going to be descending on Green Bay, Wisconsin this week. Have you heard anything about the city of Pittsburgh and their plans for where everything's going to happen?
Yeah. So the city, through a nonprofit organization called Visit Pittsburgh, the Steelers, the NFL, and a variety of other entities that have come together, are doing this plan. Last year, there were 775,000 people that went to Detroit for it, a 3-day period. The year before, it was 400,000 to Kansas City. Green Bay's a little different, right? That's kind of like going to State College or to Ann Arbor. There's just not a lot of room for that kind of stuff unless you're in the stadium yourself. You take use of that. Here it's going to be on the north side. And if you can imagine, from PNC Park all the way down to Acrisure Stadium and everywhere in between, that's where the Madhouse is going to be. There's also some contemplation about doing similar parties at the Point in Pittsburgh. We've heard rumors about Highmark Stadium, which is where the minor league soccer team plays on the South Shore. There may be something there at Station Square. I don't think those plans have been released to the public yet, but I know that all of the facilities over there, the parking, the tailgate space, the casino, the amphitheater, it's just going to be, that's where the lion's share is that's going to be, alongside the use of Acrisure and points beyond. So Pittsburgh is a little different than the other cities they've been to, because the rivers just divide it. And so it's hard to have it in one specific place. And if they have 700,000 people over a 3-day period like they did in Detroit, you're right. It's going to be a tight fit. A lot of shoehorning in of people there. But the woman who I know is working on this for the NFL is a woman named Shari Graham. We've had her on our podcast before, and she's going to be in Green Bay. She runs the green room for all those first round athletes that are there, and she's part of it too. We're going to talk to her the first week of May, and I'll have a little bit more optics on it around that time.
Okay. So what is the plan for next year's event? Are you staying at Rivers? Are you going to go to another venue? What's your plan?
Well, we don't know just yet. And in part, it's because we do have a right of first refusal at Rivers. And we can fit up to 2,500 people in a concert-style seating arrangement in that facility. So it's large enough. I mean, you can have concerts in there. And that's so we chose that knowing that we might end up growing into that. However, the league and or the Steelers might want it for something else. So we may, even though we might have that right, we might get bumped anyway.
Right.
So we've looked at a couple of places. One is one of our sponsors is Pittsburgh Brewing Company, and for those outside of the city, they might know it more as Iron City or Iron City Light Beer, and they've got a massive facility about 25 minutes northeast of the city. There's a spot for a marina. We could do outdoors. We could do it indoors. It's a really nice place. We're taking a look there. We're also looking at Highmark Stadium, also a sponsor of ours, where we might be able to do something on the field and just put some tents up. And if we need heaters, the last couple of years we've been blessed with good weather. It snowed last week, so I don't know, if we're this week. Although today is 80 degrees and sunny, it's Pittsburgh in April, and it's just a roll of the dice. So we may have to have a tent out there anyway with some heaters if necessary, and do it right on the field there. And we're also looking at a couple of other facilities just in case we get bumped.
Yeah. And so just so people out there that are listening to the Steel Curtain Network know, like, the plan is, that I've said this all along when it was announced that the Steelers, or Pittsburgh, I should say, that when they received the draft in 2020, I said, I'm going to be there. And when Joe reached out this year and said, would you like to do something kind of in concert? And I was like, it was still too late to be there in person. Next year is the plan. Steel Curtain Network, Fans First Sports Network, to be a part of that as well. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, we're looking forward to working with you on it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the actual draft and not just draft parties, which are always fun. What are your thoughts about Steelers in terms of team needs heading into the draft? Because everyone seems to be in different realms and different lanes as it pertains to where the quarterback fits, where does defensive line fit, where does running back fit? Where do you stand on team needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, it's a team that has many needs,
Right.
but this draft is one that it's not star studded, but it has a lot of starters that are going to come from it, right? So I think the second and third round, you're going to find players that may not be as sexy as Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, but they're still going to be plug and play guys. I mean, there's some depth there, and there's depth at positions of need for them. So in particular, defensive line and defensive backs. I think that those are two places that I know that the Steelers are going to need to look in some capacity. Now, there's been rumors out there about them being in the Jair Alexander sweepstakes. I'm not sure if that's cooled off. It's been a while since we heard that right after the combine. And then, obviously Miami Dolphins are trying to move Jalen Ramsey, but that's a big contract to move
Yeah.
and a lot of cap space there. So it might not be the defensive back class is deep, but I think that in the first round, they're going to look at defensive line. You're right. I mean, quarterback is the ultimate position to talk about. This isn't the class to do it. I think they're convinced that this isn't the class to do it. They did receive visits from Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart and Tyler Shaw. And I think that, maybe they address that later in the draft, but many of those guys will not be around for it. So if I were a betting man, I would say it's going to be defensive line in the first round, unless someone really like a Nick Emenwari slides to them or somebody. Now, they also do need wide receivers and they do need running backs, but I think those are positions that are better addressed in rounds, 2, 3, and 4, 3, 4, and 5, as we all know, they don't have a second round draft pick right now. So I think that's a place where they start to look to fill those voids.
Well, you brought up, and obviously, I don't think Steeler fans are going to be disappointed with DK Metcalf, but they don't have that second round pick, and it does suck. Let's call a spade right now because the Steelers could definitely use that second round pick. There's been a lot of discussion about Omar Khan potentially making some moves to obtain a second round draft pick. If you were to try and predict if it were to happen, and that's a big if it were to happen, how do you think Omar Khan is able to accrue a second round draft pick in 2025?
I think the obvious choice is moving George Pickens. And why I say it's obvious is you mentioned DK Metcalf before. DK Metcalf and George Pickens play the same position. And what I mean by that is both of them are X receivers. Neither of them are Z receivers or slot receivers. And so you've got two guys who in old school vernacular, are split ends. So when new school scouts and coach speak throw out X receiver, they're talking about John Stallworth, the split end, the guy that goes downfield, wider body, larger catch radius, good at contested catching. That's DK and George. They don't have a legitimate Z, which in old school vernacular is a flanker. I would point at Jordan Addison versus Justin Jefferson. They're both receivers, but they play two different positions, and neither of them could play the slot. Right. So you've got two guys, one of which you're going to have to pay next year, but you've already chosen to pay one, not only with a second round pick, but you also chosen to extend his contract for 5 years and pay him a lot of money. And you don't want to lose George Pickens in an offseason and not get anything in return for him, except for perhaps a compensatory pick later down the road. So I think that that's obvious. And of course, he's had clashes, not only on the field with players, but also with fans and also behind the scenes with coaches. So that makes sense to me, and I think he would warrant at least a second round pick. I think there are teams out there like the Vegas Raiders or others who are looking to fill that spot, might be able to step in and say, okay, we'll give you a high end, top 10 second round pick for a George Pickens, and he comes cheap, right? He's still on a rookie contract. They still have a year in which to work out a long term deal with him, and he'll command that next year. He's worthy of that, and I think that's one place for sure that they might be able to find, a trade partner if they're willing to move an asset for a second round or perhaps a first or a third, depending on what they can get. I mean, DK cost them a second, but I would encourage Steeler fans to say, look, in the second round, we chose DK Metcalf. We just did it before the draft happened, and we added to our team there. And then you could address the receiver position in rounds 2 or well, you don't have to, but in that second day, they've got the third round picks. You maybe take a look there and go after someone later that fills that X, or excuse me, it fills that Z position, or fills that slot position for them.
It's interesting. I know that's the common answer is to try and move George Pickens. And some people say, hey, keep him. And if he plays really well, you can franchise tag him, kind of go the T. Higgins route. I don't know if I want to do that necessarily, nor does he probably want to do that nonetheless. I want to ask you, though, about the position that everyone talks about incessantly, and that is quarterback. And the reason why is that this class is very underwhelming. It's very reminiscent of the 2022 draft class when the Steelers took Kenny Pickett in the first round. And he was the only first-round quarterback taken at that time. I know the Steelers are most likely going to draft a quarterback at some point. The question is the who and the when. So let me ask you that question. Who is the quarterback that if you were to choose, I think this would be a great fit for Pittsburgh? And then also the when does that happen? So an example would be the who and the when for the Tennessee Titans is Cam Ward, first overall pick in round 1. For Steelers, I don't think they want to take one in the first round, but when would they and who would that quarterback be, in your opinion?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, let me go back to the previous question, because there's another way they can secure a second round pick, and that's moving back. Sitting at 21, the player they're going to get at 21 is especially in this draft, it's the same player they can get at 31. It's pretty much the same player they can get at 41. There's a Darius Alexander as a nose tackle that might be just as good as a Derek Harmon or a Walter Nolan or a Kenneth Grant that you would pick in the first round. That's how deep that defensive line prospect. And if that's where they're going, and it seems to me like that's where they're going to go, that's another way that they can maybe pick up another one of those picks, or trade out of the first round altogether and pick up a couple of picks, especially if it's in the top 10 or top 5. The New Orleans Saints wanting to come back up, or maybe the Kansas City Chiefs at the end of round 1 when you move back up. But getting back to your quarterback question, there's a simple answer to it, right? It's the kind of quarterback that they're targeting. Are they targeting someone that they want to have that extra year of control over, and therefore they must pick that person in round 1? Or is this a prospect that they're bringing in that they know will be a backup in development quarterback, and therefore they don't need 5 years, where they can settle with that 4 before they become a free agent, and they don't have that extra year of control, and that begins in round 2 and beyond? My sense is exactly your sense, which is this is a weak quarterback class. There's no other way to put it. If Cam Ward was in last year's quarterback class, he may have gone 6th overall. Like literally, you would have had the 5 that went last year, all the way from Caleb Williams all the way down to Bo Nix, and then behind him would likely be Cam Ward, right? Shedeur Sanders would have been a 2nd or 3rd round. We wouldn't even be having these conversations, right? But because of the lack of depth and the want to overdraft the position, you see a lot of teams that are willing to spend a first round pick. And for a quarterback, you don't want to develop a quarterback, have to negotiate with them in year 3. You want to be able to have that extra year. So they're willing to gamble and overdraft the position for a Jackson Dart and Shedeur Sanders and make them a round 1 pick. My sense is it's going to be none of those guys. Of the 3, obviously Cam Ward's going to be gone. Shedeur Sanders may or may not be in play. Jackson Dart is the most reasonable. But again, depending on what Aaron Rodgers does, and it doesn't look like he's going to make a decision before the draft. And if he does, great, they'll know what they need to do. And maybe that forces their hand to look at Jackson Dart at 21. But up until then, I don't know. I mean, there's still rumors out there about what happens to Kirk Cousins and maybe the Carson Wentz's of the world. They've already got Mason Rudolph under contract. But my guess is that if it's not one of those top guys, it'll likely be in the later rounds. They did have Tyler Shough in from Louisville on an official visit. There's a lot of buzz around that. He's come higher on boards than one would think. If you had this conversation 2 months ago, he was a 4th or 5th round guy. Now, because of his maturity and his ability, he's just has had some bad luck with injuries, and he missed the majorities of 2022, 2023. I think even parts of 2021. Like last year was the only year that he was really truly healthy. But the guy's 26 years old. He's Whedon or Brandon Whedon, or he's Chris Winkie when it comes to. There's a level of maturity that's there, but don't look at that as a starting quarterback type. He's going to come in and Mason's going to start, right? If that's what they're doing with him. So I think a developmental third quarterback with still that that starter out there with Mason being the reliable veteran backup is probably the way they're going to go. I still think Aaron Rodgers lands here. I think the Steelers still think he lands here, but they've left themselves open to this uncertainty, and that's why you're hearing all these, the boiling of the water from all the fans beneath it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And when you talk about those, we'll call them late day 2 or early day 3 quarterbacks, where the Kyle McCord, he came in for a visit. You mentioned Tyler Shuck came in for a visit. Jalen Milroe, they had dinner with him. They didn't have any open dialogue with Will Howard that I noticed. Maybe they did, and I just missed it. I know he didn't come in for a visit. Is there any quarterback, you could throw Quinn Ewers in there if you want, any quarterback amongst that crop that you like the most for a potential, even if it's just a long-term backup? The Steelers do need that. Like, I think a lot of fans forget that, you look at the Ben Roethlisberger era, he had Dennis Dixon, he had Brian St. Pierre, he had Charlie Batch, most notably. They always had that kind of long-term backup quarterback. They need that as well. Is there a quarterback amongst that group that I mentioned that you like over others?
Yeah, I think it is Will Howard, and I'll say that for a couple of reasons. One, he's proven, right? He's durable. He can throw, the ball down the field. He has an ample enough arm. He's accurate enough. He's a winner. She's shown that. He's also gone through a lot. I heard his interview with the coach, where he was telling them that they better draft him, and the reason why was, he was not scouted by Pitt or Penn State, being a Pennsylvania guy. He mentioned Syracuse and Boston College in the same vein, had to go to Kansas State to prove himself. And then Ohio State said, you know what, kid, you got it. I'm going to bring you here. And in that year, he took him to a national championship. So for me, that's the kind of intangibles you want to look at when you're talking about a backup quarterback. He's also got size, and that leadership quality that you're looking for. Now, I'm not discounting Kyle McCord. McCord might be the most pro-ready of the 4 you mentioned. Jalen Milroe probably has the most talent, is not very accurate, and is going to need a lot of training. When it comes to it, he's going to have to get around the Steelers' brain trust, and he's been used to an SEC offense where he's running the ball for one read and run. And he has a great deep ball, but can't hit anything short and medium, and that doesn't work in the NFL. If you're inaccurate, that's the worst thing you can throw at a quarterback, right? So I think that's the problem there. Although Tomlin has been talking a lot over the last couple of years about how he wants a mobile quarterback, and Milroe, maybe that's the guy, but I don't know. And I think McCord and Howard are the most likely. Shuck will likely be gone, especially if they don't have a second round pick. The way I've been hearing his name over the last 3 weeks, I think he might even sneak up into the second round.
Yeah.
And they're just not there right now. So I think that the McCords, the Howards, the Milrows are third round and beyond. And I think that if I were choosing from them, I would choose Will Howard.
If you read the tea leaves, I agree with you. Shuck's draft stock is skyrocketing, and it's kind of going under the radar as everyone continues to talk about Shadur Sanders and where he's going to go. It seems like Tyler Shuck he's coming up. Maybe second round pick. It'd be crazy, but still. Last thing I want to talk to you about before I let you go, and I do appreciate your time, is the running back position. You mentioned the defensive line depth and how the Steelers, the player they could get at 21, they could probably even get at 31 or even in the 40s, because there's just a lot of common, similarities and traits between all those players along the defensive front. A lot has been said about the running back class and how deep that is. The only difference is I don't think they all have the same skill set. You have top end talent. We talk about Ashton Genty, and then you have someone like Cam Scatterbo, who might be like that day 3 pick that you're like, okay, let's see if we can bring this guy in, and he's like a spark plug. So in terms of this running back class, what is your takeaway from this group?
Yeah, it's exactly what you described it. It's a very deep class with a bunch of specialists, save for Genty and maybe Omari and Hampton, right? So like Genty looks like the next coming of LaDainian Tomlinson. I mean, the guy's, he's compact. He's got great contact balance. He, has the right kind of speed. He always gets yards after the carry. You don't have to worry about that. That guy is top of the class. If it weren't for him, Omari and Hampton would be that guy, right?
Yeah.
And Omari and Hampton, people didn't see him as much because he wasn't in the race for the Heisman. He played at a down North Carolina team this year, but he's got all the skill sets you want in an NFL running back, and will be a day 1 starter. The guy's a 3-down back. He's got speed, he's got size, he's got durability, he's got everything you want in a back. Beyond that, you start to get into exactly what you described: classes of backs. So by way of example, Caleb Johnson, who I know the Steelers have been interested in from Iowa,
Mhm.
probably a second or third round guy. Would be a great first and second down back guy, but he's a running back by committee guy. He's not going to be a three down back, so you're going to pull him off. But he's, he's the kind of guy that if you want 4, 5, 6 yards on first and second down, that's the guy you can, maybe turn to for that. Or a Camp Scatterbo, same kind of thing. He's got that Mike Allstott, Pete Johnson feel to him, where it's just like it's going to take 2 or 3 guys to get him down. First guy's never going to get him down. You just hope to slow him down, and he can go out of the back row field and catch. He's got that kind of pedigree to him. But the guy I like the most for the Steelers is Virginia Tech's Bashal Tutin. Uh, Bashal Tutin ran a 4.32. Looks like Maurice Jones-Drew on steroids. I mean, the guy, he can fly straight out fly. They haven't had a back that's as fast as him since Willie Parker. And, the guy will likely be a 4th round guy. He might be the top of the 3rd day type of guy. But, I'm not the only one that's noticed that either. Like he did really well, in the pro, I almost said the Pro Bowls, the not the Shrine Bowl, but the
Senior Bowl.
East West, Senior Bowl. Thank you. Sorry, I'm struggling this morning.
Okay.
But it's a long week. But he did well there. He did well at the combine. He can catch out of the backfield. If he's in open space, look out. He's just gone in a flash. But he's built like Maurice Jones-Drew. You look at him, you're like, he can't be. He's just going to truck people, and then he blows by them. And so I really think he's undervalued in this class. And I think if the Steelers play their cards right, they might be able to get him at the top of day 3 and fill that void. But every one of those other backs that are not Genty and Hampton are specialists in some kind of way. And if you look at what the Steelers have, they went out and got Gainwell, and they went out and and kept Warren, letting Najee Harris go. So they need a workhorse back that's going to be that first and second down guy. They've got 2 third down specialists in both Gainwell and Warren. And as much as Steeler fans like Warren, less is more with him. 10, 12 touches a game is right where he needs to be to maximize the kind of player that he is. And so I think that they're going to have to go out there and find a back that matches what they need for, downs 1 and 2. And I think that Bashal Tutin would be my choice of that group.
Yeah. Now, John, you don't know me that well in terms of my sarcasm, but I'm going to say this very sarcastically. You said that the Steelers haven't had a running back with that type of speed since Willie Parker. I answer that with, how dare you forget Steeler legend Dre Archer, who, boy, did he have some speed.
Yeah. He's very hard to forget.
Yeah. Some would say very easy, but all right,
Very
Joe,
easy.
I appreciate your time, and I look forward to this draft, and hopefully like a budding relationship between Fans for Sports Network and the Steel Curtain Network and Draft Nation. I'm going to give you an opportunity again to plug your website, social media handles, the event itself, whatever you want to do. Go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, so check us out at draftnation.com. At Draft Nation, we'll take you to the socials, and take a look for us online through Fans First Sports Network, and of course on the site you can listen to the podcast, you can read the articles, you can check out our prospects. We're building out a community room, excuse me, which will launch here after the draft, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have our own mobile app. So stay tuned, sign up. The membership is free right now. You can subscribe for free. You're going to get a bunch of offers from our sponsors from time to time, which is only going to benefit you. And then down the road, as we continue to grow, we might have a premium site, but right now we're just looking to be, a free site for community that loves this kind of stuff that related to team building. So check it out. If you like trade deadlines, you'd like to know what the salary cap stuff's going to be, anything going on with free agency, and of course, drafts and mock drafts, which you'll find 2 of them up there this week already. So
Fantastic. Joe, thank you for your time, man. We'll be in touch, and maybe we'll talk again soon. Take it easy.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.